This is Behind the Verdict. I'm John Horford with Myrene Cook, and today Myrene has assured me that she is going to convince us all that Karen Read is in fact guilty of murdering John O'Keefe. Myrene.
John, I didn't exactly say that. I said I'm leaning towards guilt. There are some things I still have some red flags about.
You said you were going to convince me.
Well, I'll do my best.
The tone has changed. We have guests in the studio.
It hasn't
a guest in the
changed yet.
studio, and I'm looking over just like, can someone confirm that the tone has changed? That like literally 30 seconds ago it was like, I'm gonna beat you down. And then now it's like she's being nice again. We want your real emotion.
Well, it will be the real emotion, but you have to remember one thing. So I'm a trial attorney. I can't always come out swinging and always be mean right up front. I call it my pounce and retreat scenario. I pounce on you, and then I retreat back, and I'm very nice.
Okay, well,
this is me starting out nice.
I love that. So, would you like to start us off? Why is Karen Read? Why are you leaning towards guilty so strongly, even after doing research?
I thought we were going to do it the other way. You're going to throw out your why she isn't guilty.
We really have to do it that way? You want to?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. I thought the prosecution was always supposed to go first, but
well, we do, but we also get the last word.
Okay, I'll let you get the last word too.
Fine,
there
whatever.
You go. Prosecution.
All right. So, what do you think about the fact that she says to the paramedic on scene, "I hit him 3 times"?
That did not happen.
Did you hear the latest testimony in trial number 2?
I did.
And he said that she said twice, not 3, but twice.
He wasn't sure, yeah, if it was 2 or 3, or if that's exactly what she said. And she was questioning whether she could have, not saying that she in fact did.
Right, but the quote was, I hit him, not I could have hit him, I might have hit him, maybe I tried to hit him, maybe I didn't try to hit him. It was I hit him. And when the defense in this second retrial asked this witness about it, the paramedic, he said he was very distinctly remembers her word choice was I hit him at least 2 times.
There were also recording devices going because they have like clips of that, like those interactions when she's kind of frantic and going around. It's never on the device. Like you never see that in a recording.
It's not necessarily on those recordings, but they may not have been right as the paramedic arrived and she was there. Those recording devices didn't get there till law enforcement got there, right?
I'm not sure that that's the case, but maybe.
Okay, so there's one issue.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll do one for one. Now you give me one.
Great. I think one of the most obvious ones is when Canton PD did their initial search and they brought out this the leaf blower and all of that, and they were trying to go over the layers of snow. They found the broken cocktail glass, and then they found the blood that they then put in the Solo cups, which is hilarious. No shards, not a piece of plastic from that broken taillight at all. And then all of a sudden later on, when the second group comes and does their search, within minutes, it's like, look at all these pieces of taillight. Super strange. How do you explain that? They did a search.
2 things.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
So first of all, the officers on scene are not generally the evidence techs. The evidence techs come a few minutes later, and they are trained in looking for different things. So your evidence techs might find things that the initial officers did not, number 1. Number 2, I had a homicide case that happened in the winter, and they were trying to find whether or not the knife that was used in the stabbing was at the scene. And they did bring a leaf blower and something else. I can't remember what else they brought, but it was something else that melted some of the snow so that they could see under it because a lot of snow had fallen, just like in this case. Would it be something you would normally do? Maybe not, but I think they were trying to get around the layers of fresh snow that would have fallen on top of him and or any evidence at the scene.
Again, you don't have, like, they had already, yes, correct. They had used the leaf blower to uncover those layers of snow that had fallen since the time when John was allegedly hit, right? They did not find them on that first search. It doesn't take, you don't have to have like experience. You don't have to be a genius. You could be a 5-year-old kid.
Except was it still dark when the first group was looking? Wasn't it like in the middle of the night, early morning hours? It was not light yet.
I think it was almost, it was like around that time, right?
I think it was dark when the first group came and it was light when the second group was there.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. So that can also play into it. I mean,
But
if you're looking for small things, it's going to be hard.
But you found clear cocktail glass, but you couldn't find these large pieces. Some of them were like, a couple pieces were large, of a taillight, a broken taillight. That doesn't make any sense to me.
It depends on where it was broken, where the cocktail glass was broken, how it was broken. It depends on when the snow had fallen over the top of the tail light. So you're not convincing me with that one.
Oh, man. If that's not going to convince you, I know that one of the things that you have written down there, even though we haven't taken a look at what we've written down, is that there was DNA evidence found on the taillight, right?
On the bumper.
Yeah. Well, bumper, tail light. There was on the tail light, there was DNA evidence, and then there was a single hair on the back of the car, which is also kind of weird, especially if you take a car 60 miles in a blizzard and it just happened to stay on. You'll probably say that it was frozen on or something like that. But
well, there probably was more before she took off.
Could have been, and that's what was
the
left.
Remnant, yeah.
That's a great way to describe it, man. You're a prosecutor. Here's the issue, right? So allegedly, the strange looking marks on his arm that the experts were like, for the most part, were like that it looks like a dog bite. It looks like some type of animal bite. Allegedly gouged into his arm, like those pieces of taillight, correct?
I think so.
Right? Not a single piece of DNA evidence was found on those pieces that were on the ground.
And where were they? On the ground in the elements, right?
Not a single piece, though. But they
found the ground on the elements. Have you ever done a DNA case?
But they found DNA on the little clear cocktail glass that they could somehow see in the dark, but couldn't see these large pieces of reflective plastic.
So when the prosecution brings in the DNA experts, they will talk about the surroundings and the things that might have affected the outside influences that would have affected whether or not you could find DNA on certain things. And certainly one of them is going to be weather. It was windy, it was snowy, it was a wet, heavy snow, so that's going to wash away some things to some degree. And as far as the marks on his arm, I think that the prosecution, at least in the first trial, tried to explain that a little bit, is if he was backed over to some degree, it could have been some marks that might have been left. I did a homicide case where a guy was backed over and dragged down a driveway by a Jeep, and he had L-shaped marks on his back. Do you know of any car parts that are L-shaped?
A couple.
From the bottom of the vehicle?
Nope.
Okay, me neither. And neither did anybody else until the forensic scientist raised that Jeep up and looked at it, and there was a part of, I don't know, the alternator area. I'm not real mechanical, but it was there, and they saw this L-shaped piece. So there might have been something that dragged him or he was stuck by, and that caused the marks on his arm. So I know people are saying they think it's dog bites from the dog inside the house. But you have to put him inside the house first, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So are you aware of the Google Maps search on his phone?
The Google Maps search?
Yeah.
No.
They did a GPS mapping of where his phone was that night. And according to Google, he was never inside that house, or at least his phone was never inside that house.
But he was out front. Like it can absolutely pick up as you being inside somewhere that you were just walking by. Like those maps aren't like perfectly accurate.
It's not perfect, but it's also showing he's not inside. So that's concerning a little bit.
Also, do not think it's weird that they got there around like 12:30, but I can't remember her name. I have it written down. But one of the women in the house called his phone multiple times after 2:00. Like, that's a little weird, right?
Well, maybe they were trying to figure out where they were. Are they coming? Are they not coming?
After a couple hours?
Yeah, I mean, they're at the house now. They're already drinking at bars. They're at this house party, and everybody's inside drinking. And they're like, where's John? Where's Karen?
But they're not like, where's John? Where's Karen? Because here's the other thing. That same woman said that she saw Karen pull up around 12:30.
Right.
So then she doesn't call him for 2 hours?
Well, she probably heard them arguing earlier in the night because, they were arguing all night.
And then she's just waiting around like, oh, there's Karen. And then it's like an hour and a half later. And it's like, I better call Jon multiple times back to back.
So when you go to a party, you're going to focus only on one participant and not everybody else? No, you're going to be partying and doing things and getting a drink and using the restroom and talking to people and laughing.
But she said that she watched Karen pull up, so knew that they had gotten there, and then didn't make those weird calls until then. Like, why didn't she just shoot him a text? Like, she called him multiple times. Hey, where are you?
I don't know.
Looking for you. Instead, she calls him.
But you know what?
Which sounds like what? Like they're...
Oh, it sounds like a red herring that the defense is trying to throw you off of the evidence.
It sounds like they're looking for a phone.
No, not necessarily.
What other reason do they have? And then how do you describe the calls that go back and forth between... I should have written down all the names. The guy who owned the house and his other cop buddy.
Is this the butt dialing?
The butt dialing.
Okay, the butt dialing one, I can't describe. I don't have an answer for that. So that's what makes me not completely believe
super strange. And then
that she's guilty yet.
And then, okay, then how do you explain this as well?
I thought we're going back and forth.
You're the one who said just go.
Oh, right.
All right. You're like, go. And then I was like, no, you go. And then you went. And now
we were going to go back and forth.
Right.
All right. So how about the black box on her vehicle that shows it gets parked in neutral about the time they should have been outside the house?
Yep.
And then suddenly it's put in reverse.
Yep.
And it's at 75% full acceleration going in reverse. It abruptly stops when it hits something or just abruptly stops.
0 to 24 miles per hour. Yep. I saw that, but there seemed to be I just don't think that there is a way that you could hit someone going that speed and it would cause the injuries that he has. Like
it could. I've seen a lot of car crashes where they're doing 20, 25, 30 miles an hour and people get very mangled very fast.
Yeah. They also weren't able to, like, the medical examiner, she was not able to conclude, like, how he actually died.
Well, the medical examiner, according to the ME's report, indicated that he died from both blunt force trauma and hypothermia.
Yep.
So it is blunt force trauma.
The 2 black eyes is strange, though. Like, how do you get 2 black eyes?
It depends on where he got hit. To some degree.
But no other part of the car. They're saying he got hit like down low, right?
Well, he had a skull fracture, right? So when he fell back is what they're saying is when he got the skull fracture.
And that caused 2 black eyes?
It could. I've had cases where people had head injuries. They weren't hit in the face, but because it caused a great deal of bleeding, it could bleed that way as well.
Okay, so how about this? You don't think that it's suspicious that not only did they get rid of the dog afterwards, that he got rid of his phone, took it to a military base, destroyed the SIM card, and got rid of it? You don't think that's super suspicious?
I didn't say it wasn't weird.
It's crazy suspicious. You get rid of the dog. The injuries look like dog bites. You get rid of the dog. So you can't do anything with that.
What was their reasoning for getting rid of the dog?
That the dog was aggressive.
Well, maybe it was.
Yeah, and maybe it was aggressive with him that night.
But, going back to the black box thing for just a second, they didn't put that forth in the first trial. So this is a new prosecutor who's coming to try this case.
It came up in the first trial.
No, they said it didn't.
The black box thing, the going from 0 to 24 backwards and hitting him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just rewatched it. It's in the first one.
One of the articles I read said that they didn't talk about it maybe in the same manner, or maybe they didn't bring in experts. I don't know which it was.
Yeah, they definitely brought it up. I literally just rewatched it yesterday
Did you see that the prosecution in this new trial is actually using some of the clips from her interviews?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you see the part where she talks about, and this was what they edited out, they didn't play it in the docuseries, but where she's talking about, I could have clipped him, I could have hit him, I could have tapped him in the knee and incapacitated him, and maybe he fell down that way.
Yeah.
You don't think there's anything in that that's a maybe?
I think it's very reasonable for somebody, especially somebody who is like a rational human, to question whether something like that could have happened, especially if they're all intoxicated. Like she had said, and like all of them had said, they were all drunk. They're all driving drunk. Like,
because here's the thing. I don't think this is a premeditated murder like OJ. I don't think it's a first degree. I don't necessarily think it's a second degree. Is it something maybe that was an accident? Maybe she did clip him, hit him, back into him, and then panicked and didn't know what to do. Maybe that's a circumstance.
Yeah. I also wanted to clear something up real quick. The calls to his phone were, they were earlier. They weren't quite around like 2 o'clock, but the calls between Brian Albert and Brian Higgins were at 2:22 in the morning. The butt dials that were obviously not butt dials. And even you know that.
So there's a few other weird things too that they were talking about. Like they focused a lot on the temperature of O'Keefe's cell phone battery. Did you hear about that?
No.
So what they were trying to do was ascertain how long it had been out in the cold, to say if it had been out in the cold since he was hit and he wasn't in the house, or had he been in the house, it had warmed up, and then, whatever nefarious things the people inside did, and then took him outside and tossed him in the snow.
Yep.
So they were able to get an expert from somewhere, and I wish I would have wrote down from where, to come forward and say that the temperature on O'Keefe's cell phone battery would have been X number of hours outside in that degree of cold, which would have indicated he wouldn't have been inside.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you get around that if that's a scientific type of thing. I mean, I guess you could argue maybe he dropped it outside, maybe, but most people are pretty on board and know where their cell phones are pretty much at most of the time.
Yeah, I agree with that people know where their cell phones are most of the time, but not that he didn't go inside. I mean, who knows how long he was inside. The dog attacks him right away. There's some kind of like fight going on. Another reason why there may have been a fight is because Karen had been flirting with, what's his face?
Was it Proctor?
No, I don't think it was. Higgins. Yeah, Brian Higgins. Like those super awkward, like, you're hot. Well, I always thought you were hot. Like, you're just messing with me. No, I'm not.
But what does that have to do with John's death?
John finds out about it, and John is upset about it and confronts him.
So Higgins kills him because
they start fighting.
He's flirting with his girlfriend? Because
he hooked up with his girlfriend. They kissed.
Okay, I don't still see that as a motive for murder yet.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be a motive for murder. It just, because he died outside, right? Let's say he died outside. It's absolutely a reason why two people would fight, especially two drunk people. And then they get aggressive, and then the dog gets involved because there's some kind of fighting going on, and then they don't know what to do, so they just throw the body outside.
Yeah, but you know what? These are cops, right? Say yes.
Yes.
Okay, so if they're cops...
Say yeah. Damn it, Myrene.
If they're cops and they're going to try to spin a story, don't you think they would have been smart enough not to throw the body in the damn front yard of the officer's home?
No.
Why? Because
it goes along with the story. He was coming over here. He was drunk, and his girlfriend is crazy.
It makes more sense to throw him down the street. He got out and he walked, and he was mad at her, so he's walking home.
Hey, people aren't thinking rationally when they're drunk, and they've just accidentally beat the shit out of somebody.
That's a good segue. Karen wasn't thinking rationally when she called her friend Carrie and said that John's dead. She said it 2 times and hung up, and then called back.
Her friend Carrie or John's friend Carrie?
John's friend Carrie. But here's the thing. She said that before they even knew that the body was out there. She said that before she and the other ladies had gone searching for him. So why would she say John's dead?
I think she had a bad feeling about it. Here's another reason.
Well, she had a bad feeling because she backed into him and left him in the snow.
She had a bad feeling because she knew that John would never just leave the kids and never not come home to his sister's kids. That's another thing that I think leans towards Karen definitely not doing this, is she called him like 50-something times.
She left some really angry messages that night, and even before they went out, she left some horrible messages.
But after she left the house,
so you don't want to hear that part.
But after, no, but you interrupted. You interrupted me. That's very critical. She called him like 50 something times, like, you're such an asshole. I can't believe you're not here. You're just out there. You're probably hooking up with one of the women in the neighborhood, because apparently he had slept with numerous women in that neighborhood. And he was just, she genuinely believed that he was out there 50 something times, in the messages she was leaving and the anger that she had.
So
she wasn't acting.
Let me tell you a little bedtime story.
Oh.
All right. I had a homicide case where the girlfriend and her new boyfriend lured the ex-boyfriend, tortured him, beat him, murdered him, horrible, horrible things. And to sort of come up with an alibi for themselves, she was supposed to meet this boyfriend, the ex, that night. And she...
sounds like a movie.
Yeah, it is, actually.
Is it a movie?
Yeah, there's a documentary done on it, but that's not the point.
And that was one of your cases?
Listen, my point is, she called and left messages. You were supposed to meet me. You're such an asshole. You didn't show up. Where are you? I can't believe you did this. I've had that in more than one homicide case where they try to throw things off by saying that.
But they did it like 1 or 2 times. They didn't make 53 calls and leave these like impassioned messages. Drunk. I'm just not. It doesn't seem that way. Another thing, the Michael Proctor text about Karen, not even 24 hours into the investigation. She's a babe. Weird Fall River accent, though, and no ass. She's a whack job cunt. Bitch. Retarded. No nudes so far. I hope she kills herself. Can a lead investigator with that much bias be trusted to conduct an investigation?
I am not going to say by any stretch any of those things are appropriate, accurate, or any of that kind of information, but it doesn't negate some of the other evidence that's located. He can't manipulate some of the things.
But he can manipulate the car. So on that first investigation, when they did the first search of the area, they only found the cocktail glass and the blood. It wasn't until the CERT team got control of the car that those pieces miraculously appeared. Very strange. And there's video of him in the garage on the same side of the car. You can't see.
You can't see what he's doing?
You can't see what he's doing, but...
Oh. You can't see what he's doing.
You can't see what he's doing. What's going on back there?
I don't know, but you can't say what he...
And he's also at the same time...
You can't say what you think either.
And he's also at the same time texting people all of those things. No nudes yet. Whack job. Well, retarded.
One of the other things I wrote down was the significance of the skull fracture. And the medical examiner said that the significant impact on the skull fracture is consistent with being hit by a vehicle.
I didn't see that. I've never seen that.
I did. I wrote it down.
When?
In some of the research that I did.
Which medical examiner? I saw the opposite from the medical examiner.
That's what they said. It was a pretty significant impact consistent with being hit by a vehicle.
I thought the medical examiner said that's not the case. The medical examiner concluded that she didn't have enough information to determine whether the injuries were accidental or not. Manner of death was deemed undetermined.
They do that all the time. If they can't say for sure because they weren't there. This is just like going back to reasonable doubt. Let me finish. Hold on.
Okay.
But what they did say is then the prosecution comes back and asks that follow-up question, is it possible that it was the significant skull fracture was as a result of being hit by a vehicle? And they say, they can't say definitively it was, but they can say it is consistent with that.
But they brought in the accident reconstruction experts, and they came in and said it's highly unlikely that the wounds were caused by a car. Wounds were primarily on the arms and face, and it does not correlate with car crash wounds. No broken bones.
Those are the defense experts?
Yeah, but the other expert, those are the expert experts, the ones that are nationally renowned versus the expert for the prosecution that had an associate's degree in.
Do you want to know what my first question is to defense experts?
Yeah, how much are you being paid?
Exactly.
Yeah, I know you were going to say that.
Exactly, because they get paid an awful lot of money to say whatever it is. I've done a lot of crash cases.
But to tell the truth.
Hold on a minute. You got to let me respond. So you just think you have it in the bag and you want to keep going.
No. Go ahead.
You have to look at the impact of what they're doing and what they're saying, right? So it does matter. I've done a lot of crash cases where experts come in and they say, oh, it's this way, absolutely. And the experts for the prosecution are like, no, it's not. You have to look at the science behind some of that. And I think that's one of the pieces that might be missing. I know another piece that has been a hot topic for both those that believe she's guilty and those who think she is not guilty is the Google search.
Yeah.
Right. So I looked it up and I wanted to make sure I did it right. So what it was the friend McCabe, who was in the car with her looking for Jon for a while. McCabe says that Karen asked her to do a Google search or to look up basically how long it takes somebody to die from hypothermia in the cold. So she does that. And that was about 6:33, 6:23, something 6-ish in the morning when she does that. When they look at the timestamp on the Google search itself, it shows 2:27 a.m. Now, the experts for the prosecution were able to clearly state that what they did is she had a Google search window, if you will, open, and she used the same open window that what she had used at 2:27 a.m. Now, at 2:27 a.m., she admitted she was searching for some sort of basketball or some basketball for her daughter.
Yeah.
And they showed that search at 2:27, exactly at 2:27. So she couldn't be actually searching two things on Google at the very same second, at the very same time. So there is that issue. Now, I will say the experts for the defense say, no, it wasn't a Google tab. And they're saying, no, she was looking for it at 2:27, not later on. But I think that is a circumstance where I've had cases where the phone records came up differently, whether it was from a different time zone, meaning the crimes happened in a time zone where the phone was as well, but the server for the main company was in another location in a different time zone. I've had that happen in a murder case.
Yeah, you cited that in the first episode.
Right. And so in this circumstance, it does make sense how that could come to be.
But it's just it's what expert do you believe? Because then the defense's expert came on and said that was completely wrong and that it had been searched multiple times. And then he showed the timeline of it being searched multiple times, once at like 2:27, the other time at 6, whatever it was. And they were actually spelled. There were errors in both spellings, but they were in different places for each one. And then the one at 2:27 was shown to have been deleted.
But, experts for both sides are going to have differing opinions. That's why we have a trial, right? Because we have two sides to every story. There are two sides. One side believes X and one side believes Y. And that's really what you're looking at here. But here's something that really sticks hard with me. So if Karen is saying, I didn't do this, I'm being framed, all the things, right? Why would she choose not to testify in the first trial? Or it sounds like she's not going to testify in the second trial.
Because she doesn't have to.
You're right. She has a Fifth Amendment right not to do that. But this is what sticks with me, and this is what bothers me. She wants to go on every media source, docuseries, anybody who will listen to her and tell her story. Now, what's the difference between doing that in a courtroom full of people and doing it on a docuseries?
I think it's smart.
It's a lack of cross-examination. That's what it is.
Yeah, smart.
I think it's smarmy.
I think it is wise.
I don't.
I think it's wise. And I think it's going to get her the result that she wants, which is she's not going to go to prison.
Well, yeah, it may very well get her the results she wants based upon that. But I think it is a slippery slope for defense attorneys who are officers of the court, who are allowing her to put all these statements out there in the media and all these other things when they really shouldn't be talking about it, because you don't want to taint a jury pool. You don't want them for either side tainted. And as a prosecutor, I'm telling you, I don't want a jury tainted by me. I don't want it tainted by the defense. But clearly that's what's happening. And during that first trial, we talked about it briefly. There were people outside the courthouse chanting for her, chanting when the jury was deliberating.
Yep.
I think that's prejudicial, and that can have a negative impact and an effect upon jurors who are making that determination.
Yeah, I agree. They should make it so people who are doing things like that need to be like a quarter of a mile away from the courthouse.
There also should have been a gag order so she's not out there talking about all of this and putting it out in the media, because I think that's wrong.
Then they can do that.
Right.
Right? And they should.
They didn't.
But they're not.
But they didn't.
Yeah,
and they should have.
And they're not.
They should have.
But that's not on her.
Well, it's on her to go out there and do it.
Yeah, but it's on them to stop her from doing that.
Well, if it were me and my life were on the line, I wouldn't do anything that's going to jeopardize that, because people are going to misconstrue what she says.
I promise you that she's doing this because her lawyers are telling her to do this.
Well, I also think Karen seems to like the media attention.
For sure.
Look at the way she responds and she reacts. And when she's walking in, it makes her feel like a celebrity.
Yeah. And it makes the lawyers feel the same way. They look the same way.
Oh, I think they're smarmy too.
Yeah. I don't love that aspect of it. I still don't think there's even close to enough evidence to prove that she's guilty. I think she's absolutely going to get off.
I think she's probably going to get off, but I don't know that she deserves to get off completely. I think probably what happened is I think they'd been arguing a lot. They were talking about breaking up. They were all drinking. It's not the best combination of all those things. Certainly not driving in a blizzard. None of them should have been driving, in my opinion. But let me finish. But I think that he gets out of the car. She gets ticked off at him. And I think maybe she backs into him. Maybe she realizes it. Maybe she doesn't. I don't know that for sure. But I do think that's what happened. Because if you want to believe this story that the law enforcement were all in on this conspiracy, he was killed inside the house and dumped outside, you have to get all those people in the house in on that conspiracy. It is harder than hell to get people to agree to anything, let alone keep up the story.
Yeah, and that's why they're not doing a good job of it.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
I see red flags with this. I don't want to say that I'm coming in saying she's 100% guilty. I do think she backed into him, and I don't think necessarily she meant to. But a lot of the evidence leads me to that. Now, red flags I have, the whole collecting blood in solo cups is absolutely ridiculous, and I don't know any law enforcement that would do that.
Hey, don't talk about KMPD that way.
Hey, stop. I do think that the butt dialing is not believable. Why they would lie about calling each other, I don't know. But I don't know that it necessarily rises to the level of it's a conspiracy to frame her for this. Because, I mean, again, think about it. If she's flirting with this other cop and he's flirting with her, the person who gets pissed off is Jon, right? He's dead. So why frame her for that? Why go after her?
Because you don't want to go to prison after beating the crap out of this guy, which is it's a much more likely reason for having two black eyes. And then it totally makes sense that they're fighting with each other, and then the dog gets riled up, knows the one guy more than the other guy, and bites him. How do you explain them getting rid of the dog after? And then how do you explain him taking his phone after, taking the SIM card out, destroying it, and then getting rid of it on a military base?
But what's the point of that? I mean, let's think of that for a second. Do I think it's weird? Absolutely. Should he have not done it? Probably not. But
it can't be recovered.
Yeah, but what are you going to recover? They already got the text messages. What else is going to be on that phone?
You got the text messages from Karen's phone. You didn't get anything else from his phone. That's where they got the text messages from.
But they could have gotten a subpoena, or they could have gotten a search warrant for that, for his phone or anybody else's phones from there. And we don't know necessarily they did or didn't, right? Because this goes back to what we've said time and time again. The media tells us what they want us to know about the case. There was a lot of information in the Bowman case, for example, that I knew that the media didn't, right? So there may be a lot of things out there that they did search warrants for on the other participants' phones or on other things, and maybe they didn't find the things they're looking for.
Myrene, if you were the prosecutor and it was the other way, you know that if the person in that situation got rid of their dog and then got rid of their phone and their SIM card and did all of that, you would be like, what are you doing? Like, you look like a guilty person, right? Here's
the thing. I do not think the investigation was done well by the book, however words you want to insert there. I don't think the investigation was done the way it should have been.
Yeah.
Okay. Are they lying about some things? Maybe. But there's a jury instruction out there that is read every time before a jury starts deliberating that says, it is up to you, jurors, to decide the credibility of witnesses. You can believe some of what they said, none of what they said, or parts of what they said, and that is your choice to make. So when you're looking at all of this, are there some things to me that make sense as to she's guilty? Yeah, there are. Are there other things that law enforcement did that muddy the waters and give the defense in this case the glove argument? If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Absolutely. I think there are problems there too. So, at the end of the day, I don't think there's any piece of evidence that we've bantered about here that convinces me she is 100% not guilty. But it's going to be the jury's job to decide whether there is guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think there probably will be reasonable doubt. As hard as that is for me to say as a prosecutor, I think there will be. But
I'll take that as a win.
it's not a win because you haven't heard the but yet. But my gut from doing prosecution for 25 years says I do think that she probably backed into him, and that created the blunt force trauma. I don't think it was as nefarious as they tried to make it seem. I do think she backed into him drunk. Now, whether she realized she hit him or a mailbox, I have no idea. Or she simply panicked and didn't know what to do. I do not think Karen Reed is 100% innocent. I don't. And I don't think there's anything you can say that'll change that.
And I don't think there's anything I could present that has the possibility of doing that. A couple other things came to mind though before we wrap up, even though that was probably a really good place to wrap up. You basically admitting that I won this.
No, I never said you won this.
But
never.
Is it weird that the plow driver didn't see John's body when he said that he drove right by there and he didn't notice his body at all, or that any of the people leaving the house? And I know that the body was like far off.
It was. It wasn't right in front of the house. It was down a little bit. It was at the end of the yard area, kind of thing.
Like if you were at the house and facing the road, it was like off to the right, far off to the right by like some bushes and stuff. But he was found outside of that. It's not like he was like within them. No one saw him. No one saw his body. The plow driver claims that the Albert yard around 2:30 was clear because he was plowing the road, and he was by the road.
He was by the road.
But he said he didn't see him.
But it was a blizzard as well. And so if I'm driving by something over here to my left right now, and I'm looking straight ahead down the road, and it's a blizzard, I may not notice everything off to the side because you're not trained to look at it at that moment.
But you kind of are when you're plowing, though.
But not for everything. You're not going to look at everything in every yard all the time.
Yeah.
You're going to focus on the road itself, and should I go this far over to the shoulder or that far over to the shoulder? And let's say he's passing where the body is and he looks the other way just slightly, you could miss it.
For sure.
I'm not saying that the plow driver did anything wrong. I think he didn't see it, but he might have missed it.
Or he just might have not been there yet.
But this is also the point in the episode, John, where you admit that some of the points I made are actually good points too.
Myrene, you always make good points.
No, I just want to hear you say it.
I just said it. You always make good points.
I made you say it twice.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Myrene, so manipulative.
I'm not manipulative.
You just manipulated me.
No, I just got you to admit the truth, which is this actually has points on both sides.
I've never said otherwise.
I know. Now that's 3. Thanks.
That's okay. I don't mind. I am not 100% right. No one's 100% right in this case.
No, I think it's very sad. I think the whole circumstance is sad. This young man lost his life, and whether he was drunk, beside the point. Whether he was an asshole that night, beside the point. Whether he picked a fight with somebody, beside the point. He should not have lost his life over that type of argument if that's what it was.
Agreed. And he's been overshadowed.
He really has.
He's barely spoken about, genuinely. Like the family and friends obviously want to keep his memory alive and they're very emotional about like how good of a person he is. But this really has become the Karen Reed show.
It really has, and I'm glad you said show because that's just what it's been like. It's been a media circus from beginning to end. It'll continue to be a media circus as it goes on. But I think it's often the victim is overshadowed. And in this case, he was a very good person. I mean, he took in his sister's children when she died. He went from being a bachelor living the life to suddenly being a single dad trying to figure all of that out. He was a police officer who I believe and read things about that had done a lot of good for his community. And his family came forward and his friends came forward and said what a good, caring guy he was. So I think it's unfortunate that it's become this media circus where it's not focused on John O'Keefe anymore. It's focused on Karen Reed, and it's focused on the butt dialing and all of the other things that clearly should be part of a trial, but it should never overshadow the thought or the mindset or the victim themselves. And I think that's what's happened here.
I agree 100%.
See, we agreed at the end of the episode.
We're back to the same team.
Oh, that's good.
We're back to the same team. But the people on TikTok are not on our team. Like I was saying before we started recording, man, people are getting real upset about this case. Karen really does have an effect on people that's powerful. Like the comments that we're getting, people get so worked up over this case. We love it. Keep it coming. Comment more, like more, follow.
You know, that reminds me, I forgot. I did an informal poll on social media. I just thought of it yesterday, so it wasn't out there all that long. But I had 59 people respond, and 33 people said they felt Karen was guilty to some degree. They weren't saying first-degree murder or second-degree, but guilty to some degree. And 26 people said not guilty.
How many of those guilties were you?
Just one.
Just voting in your poll?
Just one.
Just one?
Just one.
Okay. What about people that you intimidated?
I don't intimidate anybody. I'm very nice.
You are intimidating, Myrene.
Look at my smile.
I know.
Does it look intimidating?
I haven't forgotten what they called you in the Bowman case.
Very nice prosecutor.
Wicked Witch of the West?
Yeah, they might have said that, but you can't take what Bowman says. He's a liar.
Yes, we agree on that. Okay, we need to rein this in. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on our Instagram page or our TikTok, which is where most of the aggressive comments are coming from, but we love it. So keep that coming. It's BTV_pod.
Let us know what you think. In your poll, do you think she's guilty or not guilty, and why?
You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.